check, check, check. If you guys haven't heard of the Zoom F3 field recorder, definitely check this thing out. I've been using it on the last couple of videos, maybe 2 or 3, and it's so nice not to ever have to mess with levels anymore. So this thing records in 32-bit float, which means that you get some awesome sound quality out of this, no matter if your input level is too high or too low, and the noise floor is super duper low as well. That is not what this video is about. In fact, I am doing a very quick lens review, and I thought in this video what I would do is do 10 photos and try to capture everything that I would want to capture in regards to this lens in just looking at 10 photos that I took with it. So that's a bit of a challenge that I set for myself, and hopefully this video is useful and you guys learned something from it. But today I am reviewing the TTartisan 50mm F0.95. Now don't confuse this with the full frame lens, which I have reviewed in the past. This one is specifically for Sony APS-C, although it's made for a ton of other different mounts as well. All right, so it comes in a small gray box, gray and black. Inside you get the typical 2 little pamphlets. You get a TTartisan user guide, hopefully you can see that, and then a warranty card. The lens is tucked nicely in some padded foam, which is always a very good thing. And here is the lens. Around the back you have a plastic lens cap, pretty typical stuff, and then around the front a metal screw-on type lens cap, which isn't my favorite because that happens and because it's kind of hard to keep track of these things. And they're not the easiest to put on and take off. But here is what the lens looks like, and I can tell you it's a very unique design to say the least. All metal mount, no electronic connections here because this is fully manual, no rubber gasket or any other type of sealant here. TTartisan logo here. So you have a very large focus ring here that does extend the front of the barrel. This lens does have a little bit of focus breathing, so if you're planning on doing some focus pulls, just be aware of that. Some nice markings. Obviously, these are all engraved, which is very nice. A couple of little screw holes for adjusting the zoom ring. This is basically engraved grooves. It looks like it's just cut out of the actual aluminum or metal that they used in the construction of this lens. Rotation here is very smooth and even throughout. In front of that there is an aperture ring here, and you'll see and hear the distinct clicks going from f0.95 all the way to f16. Then around the front you can see my head is upside down, but DJ optical, yes, very important. Lens specs here, a serial number, and TTartisan logo. So pretty cool looking, and look at that, you just see all the way through it. Manual focus to the rescue on that shot, but I count a 10-bladed diaphragm. I don't believe that they are rounded. Anyway, it is very sturdy feeling in the hand, kind of heavy for the size. It's a very compact lens, and obviously most 50mm manual lenses are very compact. 412 grams, so you know, just under a pound or so, which is not bad at all for this compact thing. I have a camera here, and I'll show you guys what it looks like on the camera. This would look great on a silver-bodied A6000 or something like that, because imagine how much cooler it would look on a silver-bodied camera. It's a very nice design, although I will say, and I've heard this from other reviewers, but TTartisan, when it comes to designing lens bodies, they just are all over the place. They don't really have a consistent design theme, and so some lenses will look like this, and then every other lens looks completely different, which is maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing, depending on how you want to do your brand. Anyway, let's get into what this lens is capable of. So again, I took a total of 10 shots with my A6100 out with my wife today, and I'm doing this video kind of quickly because I'm leaving on a trip tomorrow, but I want to get this out, and I will have further follow-up videos with this lens because I'm planning on doing a comparison. So let's get into the screen recording, and you guys will see what the 10 photos I chose look like. And I'm gonna go in one by one. Now, when I was shooting these photos with my A6100, I'll be honest, I took probably an average 3 shots for each one, and I picked the best out of the 3 just because focusing a manual lens at f/0.95 in most cases is very, very difficult. The first shot here, I wanted to demonstrate minimum focusing distance, which is not that close. It's not really a macro lens, but here is a shot of a little flower and a bee on it. And you'll see immediately this lens wide open at f/0.95 has the dreamy look, which is, you know, what a lot of these lenses often turn into. It's kind of soft, and so they call it dreamy, but it's soft. And so it's not a sharp lens wide open, as you can see here in the center. It's not going to be a Sigma 56mm right off the bat. And you'll see that the contrast is definitely affected. So it's not as contrasty as other sharper lenses. So the next one here is a portrait of my wife, and it was super bright. And on these days, I wish that these cameras would shoot at higher than 1/4000 of a second. This just turns into a very bright portrait, but still, look at the bokeh in the background, nice and smooth. And look at the sharpness in the center. This was the absolute best out of the 3 photos that I took. And so you'll see that, yeah, it's a little bit soft even if you have it focused correctly. But for portraits, that may or may not be a good thing. I mean, a lot of people like shooting portraits like this, which kind of hide blemishes, if you will. Next shot here is to demonstrate chromatic aberration, so shot into a bright background, and this lens does have chromatic aberration, as you can see here, purple fringing, there's little bits of green as well, but it's not as horrible as a lot of other cheap manual lenses. As you stop it down, it's no longer an issue, but why stop down a lens that you could shoot at f/0.95 anyway? So this one was shot at f1.4. And I wanted to see how much sharper f1.4 was in comparison to f/0.95. And so here we are zoomed into the eyes, and you can see immediately, yeah, it's significantly sharper. I mean, I would say at least 20% sharper. And you still get a ton of creamy bokeh in the background. So even shooting at f1.4. So the next shot here is done at f8. This one, I wanted to just test sharpness across the frame. So I focused right in the center of this brick building here. And you can see that at f8, this lens is decently sharp. And then as I move into the corner, pretty good performance at f8. So if you had to use this lens for landscape work, as long as you stop it down to f8, I mean, it's not like the corners are overly blurry or anything like that. Next shot, bokeh. So we are on shot number 6 out of 10. So here is an example of the bokeh. Have my wife here in the center. I think I focused decently well, but again, wide open, you get that dreamy look. And look at the bokeh balls. They are nice and round and circular. I didn't notice any onion ringing or any other artifacting or some weird textures or anything like that. The bokeh on this lens is overall very smooth and pleasing to the eye, so that is a thumbs up. Next shot, wanted to see vignetting and barrel distortion. So here's a shot of a garage. There's just this ever so slight barrel distortion on it. And as far as vignetting, there's very little of it. I mean, the corners you can see here are not very sharp. They're pretty blurry. I focused on the hardware here in the center, which is relatively in focus, but the corners tend to get blurry. But on the positive side, on an APS-C size censored camera, does very well in terms of vignetting. Next sample here is flaring. This lens flares like crazy, as you would expect. Pretty heavy flaring, green colors, occasional orange. Here's just one example of that. So something to look out for. A lot of artistic, creative potential, I think, with a lens such as this one. Next shot, this one is, I believe, wide open. Yes, it is. So just wanted to demonstrate the corners again on this. So look at the center, decently sharp. I tried my best with focus. A little bit of barrel distortion, and the corners are just not very sharp, wide open, as you would expect. And then the last shot, shot number 10, is low light. And here we are. This is shot 1/20 handheld at ISO 100. And this thing is letting in a ton of light. This is f/0.95. If I were to take a shot like this with a typical f2.8 lens, for example, you would not even be able to see Janessa at all. One of the reasons that you buy something as crazy as this f/0.95 is for the low light capabilities of it. All right, so what are my overall thoughts of this lens after using it for a day and taking a couple of sample photos with it? Well, in this sort of 50mm super fast manual lens market, there are just way too many options. And so unless you have a lens that is overly sharp or has overly unique characteristics, it's hard to stand out and still gain traction among customers, I think personally. I may be wrong, but that's the way I would approach it. There's just so many 50mm fast primes that are manual available for APS-C and full frame, and it's a very popular focal length, probably the most popular focal length, so it makes sense that they make more and more of these, but it gets harder and harder to recommend a good one because there's just so many to choose from. Right now, my top pick is still the 55mm f1.4 that I talk about all the time, but I'm curious to test this against that and test it against the newer Makey as well. And so you guys have to stay tuned for those videos. The other thing that I want to talk about with this lens is that the price of it. Now, obviously, most lenses, when they start getting into this realm of f/0.95, are crazy expensive. For a full frame f/0.95, you're gonna spend around $400, I would say right now. This thing is $218, I believe, on Amazon, $218 US, so just over 200. I haven't checked their website. It's probably right around $200. I don't have any discount codes as of yet, but maybe I'll see if I can find some for you guys if you are interested in buying this directly from TTartisan. So $200 versus spending potentially around $100 for a lens such as the 55 f1.4. That's going to be a judgment call. At some point, you get so much bokeh and you get such a narrow depth of field that it's almost impossible to focus this lens on anything. But this lens in particular has a very nice feeling focus ring, and I think it has just enough rotation. I wish it had a little bit more just so I can fine tune my focusing just a little bit more, but it's overall not bad compared to other manual lenses out on the market. So I'd say it's not a bad buy if you're just looking for something to go out and casually shoot and get that dreamy, aka soft look from your portraits. As long as your subject is in the center of the frame and you're shooting it wide open, you can get somewhat favorable results. Just don't expect any sort of corner sharpness. But that's going to wrap it up for this video. Let me know what your guys' thoughts are on doing a quick review like this with just 10 photos. Was it better or worse than my normal reviews? Hope you guys enjoyed and you learned something from it. Thank you so much for all of your comments, all of your likes, and your support. Thank you to TTartisan for sending this lens out to me for review. And again, stay tuned for upcoming videos where I will feature this thing again in a side-by-side comparison. Thank you. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.